Hello, today let us start with exception handling in Python. So an exception is a runtime error that are raised when the program is syntactically correct, but the code results an error. So the error does not stop the error does not stop the execution of a program. However, it changes the normal flow of the program. So it's an exception can be a runtime error which you could able to encounter when you are executing some program, and if you find some error, so those are the exceptional errors. So in order to handle this, we have in order to handle this, we have four blocks, which are try, except, else, finally. Now, the try block contains code which may cause exceptions. Whenever if you find any of the exception, this try block will try to check for the exceptions. Except block. So except block is used to handle an exception that is raised in the try block. It is used to handle the exceptions. What are the runtime exceptions which you occur when you are executing a program, right? So in order to handle that, we can use of except block. Else block. So this block will get executed when no exceptions is raised, and else block will execute only after the completion of try block. So if you didn't found any of the exceptional error, then this else block will get executed. This else block will only get executed after the execution of try block. So finally block. So final block will get executed irrespective of whether there is an exception or not. So this block will get executed even though if you didn't found any of the errors. So now let us look into the example and try to understand the exceptional handling blocks in Python. So I will try to take two variables, a as 5 and b as 2. So I will declare an equation a divided b for c variable. Then I will try to print its value. Then finally I will print the rest of the statements. Four statements. This is my last comment. So once after the execution of this program, the following rest of the code statements will get executed. Rest of the code statements. When I run this, I will get a value as 2.5 and the rest of the code statements. So since everything looks fine here, but for example, if you face any of the error while executing, how can you handle with the blocks? That's the thing we can discuss now. So instead of b, let me define a 0. So when I run this, I will get an 0 division error because any value with divided by 0 is not possible, hence it's giving 0 division error. So once the program got affected, the output won't be displayed with respect to print statement C, since the division is not at all happening because it's raising an exception, so it won't print the output. And but the rest of the code statement is also one of the print statement which need to be executed after the execution process. As it raised an exceptional error, even this printing this statement is also got affected. Hence, in order to resolve this, we can make use of all the four blocks. Now let us try to implement those blocks. Now if I try to add try block inside this statement, and I will try to add except block if I found any of the exceptional errors. So what is the error I am getting? It is 0 division error, and I will copy paste that error as ER. Then I will print that error which is ER. So once after this exceptional, when I print this, so first it will check. So what exactly here happening is, so when I given an variables a and b by assigning an value 5 and 0, the try block will run first whether to check whether any exception is happening or not. So that's what the slide 1 indicates. So try block contains code which may cause exceptions. So the code what we are passing, right? So we will be pass the value and the evaluation expression here, so to check whether any exceptions occurs or not. So that is the procedure of, or that is the working procedure of try block. Then except block. Except block is used to handle an exception that is raised in the try block. So except block is a block which is used to raise an exception when you face any of the error. For example, when you run the try block, you will be facing some error, and have captured that error in the except block, and I have marked and I have defined it as an ER, and I have printed that error as well. So here you could able to see whenever a divided by 5 is not possible, so it try block will raise an exception, then except block will run this exception and the print, and it will give an output as division by 0. So this is the error message which it is giving. So later on, as the code execution completes, then the rest of the code will be printed. So the rest of the code statements has been printing. So this is how exactly now the execution process has gone very smooth, instead of affecting any of the rest of the statements. So we can make use of another statement as well, which is else block. Else block is used to check. So else block is used to get executed when there is no exception raised. So I will try to add a comment printing the else block statement. So whenever if you didn't found any of the exceptional error, then this else block will be printed. So if I try to run this again, now you could able to see this else block is not at all printing, because I am facing an exceptional error in the try block, and hence it's showing and in except block it's throwing an error as division by 0, and the rest of the code which I want to print, right, the rest of the code statement is printing. So hence the execution process is clear. Now I can make you, so in order to print this else statement, instead of b is equal to 0, I will make use of 2. Now I will try to print the code. So now the value is 2.5. So, and here the print C value has been printed 2.5, and hence it didn't found any of the exception error. Except block will be neglected, and in the else block, printing the else block statement has been printed, because the else block will get executed when there is no exception is raised. So else block is executed after the try block. So once after the execution of try block, it will else block will be print unless or until it didn't face any of the exceptional errors. So now else block has been printed, and we can print finally block. Finally block, printing the finally block. So finally block, so this block will get executed irrespective of whether there is an exception or not. So this block will get printed even though if you didn't found any of the exceptional errors, or if you face any of the exception errors, this block doesn't care, and it will print it. That's it. So when I run this, you can see 5 divided by 2 is, so when I run this, I will get an output as this. So since I have declared a two variable a and b, which value is 5 and 2, and I will pass an value, and I will start to run this and I will try to do the evaluation in the try block. Once the evaluation is done, it will print the value C. Since everything looks fine, it will print the value C, which is 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. So it didn't found any of the exceptional error, so except block will be ignored, and else block will be get executed, because else block is the block which will executed unless or until if it didn't face any of the exceptional errors. So this block will execute after the try block. Once after the printing the value, which is 5 divided by 2 is 2.5, now else block will be print, and the statement is printing the else block statement. And finally we have one more block, which is finally block, and finally block will print even though if you face any exceptions or if you didn't found any of the exceptions. So it will print. That's it. So this and printing the finally block is also available in my output statement, and the rest of the code will be printed. So if you found any of the exceptions, now let us see within another case. If you found any of the exception, so here 5 divided by 2 is 0. So since try block, when try block gets evaluation, which is a divided by c, then it will face an error here. Then except block will be triggered. Then it will check for the error. So it will print an error called division by 0. Then so since if you found any exception, else block won't be printed. So hence else block output is not at all available. So and finally block will be printed even though if you found any of the exception, or except if you found any of the exception, or if you didn't found any of the exception. then printing the final if block, and finally the rest of the code statement is executed. So these are the 4 blocks which will be used whenever you are writing a set of program in order to avoid the program flow. Like in order to avoid the any mistake or corrupt thing happening for program flow, we could able to execute these set of blocks in order to execute the program flow very smooth. So that's all with the exceptional handling. Thank you.